Today we're making the Sewfisticated travel belt using vinyl. Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Ali. If you're new here, in this channel I share sewing tutorials and tips so that you and I can make beautiful things together. As you may have seen already online, a lot of people have made this beautiful travel belt by Sewfisticated, and I actually made one using her instructions, the original way she teaches, and I really enjoy making it because it has very few pieces to cut, and with a ripstop you don't need to interface it. So it is a very simple pouch, so if you're a beginner bag maker, this is definitely something you should try, and don't get intimidated by the binding. This is perfect for you to practice if you are not experienced at adding binding. These little curves can help you practice, and I think you'll enjoy it. So as I was making this and I realized I just wanted to make more of them, I said, well, I have this clear vinyl that I purchased, and this jelly vinyl that is so pretty. I wonder how it will look. And I started making this one, and I put some pictures on social media asking everybody, do you think this will be a good pouch? Do you want to learn how to make it? If it works out, would you make it? And a lot of people responded saying yes. So after I made it and I realized, oh yeah, this is doable, then I decided, let me go ahead and do a tutorial on how to make the travel belt by Sewfisticated using vinyl. And so today we are going to make this one. Look how cute this is. Here's your slip pocket, okay? Then you have your first zipper pocket on top. I did not add the mesh pockets on the inside, but if you decide to do that, I would suggest that you do 2 panels so that you can stitch the mesh pocket on one panel and then the other panel is smooth. And then I have my front zipper panel with the card slots. And for the card slots, I used ripstop. Other than that, it was, very, very easy. If you are a beginner bag maker and you've never done vinyl, if you've, tried vinyl and you feel like, okay, yes, I can do it, I definitely think you can give this a try. It was a fun project, and I'm excited. I will be making more. I have the links down in the description of some of the materials that I used, the pattern maker, link to, so you can purchase the pattern. I'm not an affiliate of the pattern maker or some of the products, but if I am an affiliate, it will be listed down in the descriptions. I've added timestamps, so if you want to jump to a specific part of the video tutorial, you can go there. And please let me know down in the comments what you think, if you're going to make it, if you have any questions for me or suggestions that you want me to try. If at any point you feel like you've learned something or this video has been of help to you, please consider hitting the like button. It helps me more than you know. And if you're new, consider subscribing so that you can receive notifications when I upload videos like this one. Other than that, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so for this one, we're going to use this beautiful clear vinyl. And look at those colors, it's so pretty. And we're also going to use jelly vinyl. And for the inside, for the cut slots, I am going to use this nylon ripstop. I am going to use the already made double-sided bias tape, and this color is the color that matches my webbing. And this is a 1-inch nylon webbing. And that webbing comes with the buckles. So I have here my buckles and the sliders. I just need 1 slider. Okay, and I'm doing this on purpose because these are the accent colors, and the thread that I'm going to use is the matching color of my binding, only because everything that you're going to stitch in this bag is going to be stitched on top of the binding. So really doesn't matter what colors you use here for your vinyl or your like the main colors of your bag. What matters is what binding color you're using, because that's where you're going to be stitching. So make sure that you know that and you have the right color for that you want. I'm going to add this zipper, this collar. This is a zipper by the yard. I'm gonna cut the two little pieces. These two little pieces of jelly vinyl are from my previous bag. And these are like the zipper tabs. I'm going to use them for this bag, but it's because I really don't want to waste them. So I already have them. I'm just going to use them. The feet you're going to need for your sewing machine are the following. I used a 1/4 inch foot. This is my standard, the one I use for everything. Keep a zipper foot handy. You may or may not need it, but it's always good to have it around. And I definitely will use this guide foot. This is a 1/4 inch foot with a guide. And this foot will be used for adding the binding. So very important. I have a video here where I share with you my experience using this foot for the first time. And again, you may or may not need a Teflon foot, but if it's always good to keep it handy. I did not use it because you're stitching over the binding the whole time. But just in case, I mean, it's always good to have. You can use that instead of using the regular 1/4 inch foot. For your marking tools, you're going to need a permanent marker to trace your pattern when you are cutting the vinyl. And an erasable marker. One thing you're going to need a lot is double-sided tape. I mean, this is it. You will need double-sided tape for this project. You will not be able to pretty much do this without it. So make sure you get a 1/4 inch double-sided tape. Wonder clips. You will also need some fray check. You will also need a stiletto or owl when you're sewing. This is gonna help you a lot when you're adding the binding, and a lighter to kind of burn the edges of your webbing so that it doesn't fray. You will also need some scissors. So my snipping scissors here, or just regular scissors, to cut the webbing or the excess fabric around the corners, etc. Cutting the pattern pieces. Now, to trace the pattern piece on your printed vinyl, all you need is to use a permanent marker. If your vinyl has a printed side like this one, then it's best to trace the pattern on the back side of the vinyl. Now, for the slip pocket of this travel belt, you need to decide if you want the opening on the right hand side or on the left hand side. I want the opening on the right hand side. Therefore, I have to trace my pattern with the right side of the pattern facing down, so the writing instructions facing down against the back of the printed panel. If you want the opening on the left hand side, then you'll trace the pattern with the right side, the writing pieces, the writing of it facing you against the back side of the printed vinyl. Then after you're done tracing it, all you're going to do is cut it using your cutting scissors. When you're cutting it, just make sure you cut on the inside of the permanent marker lines. And don't worry if you see some of the marker lines after you're done cutting the pattern. You will be covering these with your bias binding. Do the same with all your other pattern pieces. here are the pattern pieces. So the first one is the card slat panel. And for this, I use the ripstop, and I mark the top and bottom, and I place the markings where I'm going to do the folds. Next, I used the jelly vinyl for the back panel, but we're only cutting one because we're using the vinyl. Also, with the jelly vinyl, I'm cutting the front panel main compartment, and it's only one as well. For the front panel zipper pocket, I have one of my clear printed vinyl and one of the jelly vinyl. For the front panel, these are the side panels. We have two of the clear printed vinyl. The back panel slip pocket, I cut one with the clear printed vinyl. And for the zipper tab, you have this long piece that then you cut into fours. But you only need two pieces, so you need half of this for this if you're using vinyl. But because I already have these from my previous bag, I'm gonna use these. And it doesn't matter that they're green and the rest of the things are purple, because as you can see, there are some green in this, so it will match. It will look cute. Now with the slip pocket, after you decide, if you want the opening to the right, to the left, and you do that, you have to, trim the opening a little bit more. The original pattern calls for an exterior and a lining of this back panel slip pocket. But because we're using vinyl, we only cut one exterior. So when you're making the bag, the travel bag with regular fabric, you join the exterior and the lining, and you stitch your seam allowance, and then you fold it right side out. So this is a little bit smaller because you have your seam allowance, and we don't have that in this case. So what we're going to do right now is you're going to, flip it with the wrong side facing you, and you're going to measure 1/4 inch down from the edge. And if you have, your rotary cutter here, you can just cut it. So I'm just going to draw a line 1/4 inch down from that edge, and just cut it. And that will work just as if I had my seam allowance there. Okay, that's really the only modification we're doing to this pattern. So it's a little wider and bigger, the opening. I also cut my zipper by the yard into two pieces with one zipper pull. So once you have all your pieces together right here, we can get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is make the card slot pocket. And for that, you have your markings. You have your top and the bottom markings. And then you have 4 lines here on the side. So you're going to choose the second line down from the top, and you're going to fold it. You're gonna fold your fabric like this and put a wonder clip there, and another like here, okay? And just you can finger press it or create a crease like that. And then you're going to do the same with the first marking from the bottom up. And again, just make a small, crease with your fingers here. Okay. And you can just fold it and make a small crease. You're gonna take this to the sewing machine, and you're going to stitch along that crease on these 2 folds at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I changed the thread for white, so I wanted to make the card slot first so that I could get the white thread out of the way per se, and then change it to the other color and continue with the rest of the bag. I just want to mention how important it is to mark your top and your bottom before you stitch this, because if you don't, you are really not going to know which way to go right now unless you have a directional fabric. With that in mind, here's my top, here's my bottom. So I'm going to take my stitched folded section here, and I'm going to match that folded edge that I just stitched to that top line, the very first line from top to bottom. And again, I'm just going to put a wonder clip here. And then I'm going to do the same with my other folded section here. I am going to take that folded section and I'm going to align it to that other marking there. Okay. I have here my 2 pocket sections for my cards. And at this point, you're going to take a ruler and a marking pen. You can either do it this way, fold it in half and mark the middle there, or take your ruler, find the middle, and then place a marking. I am not going to use my pen to draw a line, but if you have a darker color fabric and you have the chalk, you can just draw a line there. Now it's just stitch it down the center from the top to bottom, and I do double stitching. So I stitch from top to bottom and then from bottom to top down the center. Make sure you measure your distance here. Make sure that you test and try, put some credit cards, IDs, whatever, and make sure they fit correctly. If it does, then you're good to go. If not, go ahead and remeasure this and make sure it looks good and that the distance from here to here matches what the pattern designer says. For the next step, you're going to need your smaller zipper tape here that you cut, the exterior zipper panel, the lining zipper panel, a small piece of your bias tape, double-sided tape, and some wonder clips. We need to join the front zipper panel and the lining zipper panel to our zipper tape here, so that at the end it looks like this. But because we're using vinyl and we can only stitch one time, preferably, I try to avoid stitching the vinyl more than once. We need to do this in pieces, and we're going to use the double-sided tape to help us with that. So I added bias tape here to my front zipper panel, and as you can see, it's not stitched. It's because I put a little piece of double-sided tape and just placed my bias tape like that, so it stays in place for now. So the first thing I'm going to do is join my zipper to the front zipper panel. And so I'm going to flip it, everything wrong side up. And let me tell you why. Because I'm going to use my bias tape as a guide to know where I'm going to place my front zipper panel. Okay, I want to make sure the bottom edge of my zipper tape matches the bottom edge of my bias tape, and that is going to give me the exact measurement for the placement of my front zipper panel. To do that, I'm going to take double-sided tape and I'm just going to place a little piece there right on the bias tape. It's a lot of tape. Double-sided tape, bias tape, zipper tape. Okay. And then carefully, I'm going to put my zipper tape with the wrong side facing me, and I'm going to align it here to my bias tape in place. Now I'm going to take my lining piece, and again, take a little piece of your double-sided tape. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to know the exact placement, because we're going to align our lining vinyl to the front vinyl, to the exterior. That way it matches. That way it matches, and I know that my zipper teeth are not gonna catch my vinyl in the back. And again, I test my zipper, it opens and it closes. So you know, you just want to make sure that everything is good before you take it to the sewing machine. And the beauty of this step is that if something's crooked or you don't like how it's looking, you can always take it apart and tape it again. So next step is taking it to the sewing machine, and we are going to stitch it on top of the bias tape and bottom of the bias tape using 4mm stitch length. And for this you may need to use a zipper foot. Now we're going to make the strap, and so get your webbing out and get your buckles and your slider or adjuster, and let's go ahead and kind of burn the edges a little bit just to make sure that they don't fray. One thing that I made different with this webbing is I made it about 8 to 10 inches longer. This is about 56 inches long, and I want it to be very long so that it can fit anybody. And you know, with the adjuster you can make it as small as you want or as long as you want. But I also made it a little bit longer because I want to have webbing behind the zipper pocket, behind the card slots. I don't know, I feel like it's an extra security step, since we're only stitching one time and we can't really back stitch too much or double stitch. So that's why my webbing is a little bit longer. So just pick one side, and we're going to start with this end, the female side of the buckle. Insert that through that opening and fold it. Go ahead and do like 1.5 inches, and you can either fold it and stitch it that way or just leave it as is. So if your machine doesn't take the bulkiness, then I would definitely suggest you leave it like that with just no fold. But if you think that your machine can take it, you can just fold it and then stitch it like 3 layers of webbing. I don't really see the need for that. My machine can take it, but I'm still gonna do 2. And so I will take it to the sewing machine and just stitch it in 2 places, or you can do the square and then the cross in the center, whichever way you want. Again, I think I'm gonna do the square and then the cross in the center because I just like to have that extra safety, extra stitches. And now we're going to join the other end of the buckles here. So just make sure everything is straight and there's nothing twisted. So you have one end, and now on the other end you're going to insert your slider. And so this is like when you're making a strap, an adjustable strap, and I have a video here showing you how to make adjustable straps. But then you're going to insert your webbing at the bottom of the slider, and then it's going to go over the slider. Then you're going to grab the other side or the male side of your buckle. So just to make sure, I close it just to see which way I'm going to insert it. So from the bottom up and over and down. Okay. You're going to do that. So let's unbuckle it. And then you're going to take that webbing and you're going to insert it here on your slider again, but now underneath the original webbing. And here at the bottom is the other end. And you're going to do the same thing. I'll leave a little more room on this one, more than just an inch, to give it room for my sewing machine to go in there. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to stitch it a square and then the cross in the center, okay, to close off our webbing. Okay, look nice, right? It's adjustable. You have your buckle here and it's ready to be used. But we're going to put it on the side for just a second. Now get your zipper pocket one more time. Get it out. And now we're going to add 2 pieces of bias tape on each side of your zipper pocket here. And now we're going to stitch the webbing behind the zipper pocket. And for that, you want to make sure that when you look at your webbing, that this is how it's going to look in the front, okay, when it's complete. The buckle is going to show right here on your left hand side, and then the rest of the webbing is going to continue this way. So I'm just gonna leave like the stitching out, like the thickness, that 1 inch square. I'm going to extend it away from the bias tape. And here on the back, you're going to follow the measurements from the pattern, and it's going to tell you where you're going to place this webbing. So let me put a wonder clip there to keep my binding in place. And then with your webbing the right way facing you, you're going to flip it and you're going to align your webbing to those markings that you have from the pattern, and right there. So at this point, if you want to make it easier on you, you can place a little piece of double-sided tape on your webbing here. So know that I'm going to, okay, this is where it's going to go. So I'm putting a little piece of my double-sided tape there on my bias tape, and another small piece, you know, no more than an inch wide, no more than an inch long, and right underneath that marking. And that is going to help you keep the webbing in place as you align it and take it to the sewing machine. And here's my webbing, right side facing down, and I'm just going to align it there and align it there, and there's my double-sided tape. So there it is. This is how it's going to look. Now, very important, when you take this to the sewing machine, you're only going to stitch on the inside of the bias tape, That's it. Don't stitch both ends, just on the inside. So you're going to start stitching from the top of your zipper tape at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, 4mm stitch length. You're going to stitch all the way down. So make sure your bias tape is in there, all the way in, that all the raw edges are covered by the bias tape. Okay. To add the side panels, you're going to take your side panel pieces and say this is the size of it. They're going to match from the top of your zipper all the way to the bottom of your zipper pocket. You're going to place your side panels on the wrong side of your zipper pocket with the right side facing down, and you're going to place it along that bias tape binding over your webbing like this. Okay, so as you can see, I have this one and it's longer. Okay, and then I have this other one which is also longer. The reason for that is because I had to fussy cut my vinyl because of the design, and I wanted the colors to match. So like all the blues go together, the pinks, the yellows, etc. So for that I had to, you know, cut it a little bit longer and make it work in a way that all the design matches. So if you have a fabric that has a pattern, that has a design that you need to fussy cut, this is how you will do it. Otherwise, you will just place it right there and it will look good. So as you can see, I already did this side. So let's flip it with a wrong side facing you. And you're going to take your piece of the side panel, and it already has double-sided tape here, so you can put a piece of double-sided tape on your binding and just place it right there at the very edge of the double-sided tape like this. Beautiful. So now I'm going to stitch it on the outer edge of the bias tape, the binding here. So you're going to stitch over your zipper tape, the thickness here of all your binding and the webbing, and then all the layers of your zipper pocket and the side panel, all along the side here, the outer edge. So after completing that step and it's all flushed and it looks nice and even, you're going to take your main panel front compartment, and you are going to place this finished zipper pocket panel on top of it, okay, and stitch it together. Before we do that, just to make it easy on you, you can take a piece of double-sided tape, but not just to make it easy on you, but to make it easy on myself. I take a little piece of double-sided tape, not so little, huh? And I'm going to use the double-sided tape to join these two together, these two pieces together, and help it stay in place as I add my bias tape binding. Now we're going to take it to the sewing machine, and you're going to stitch it right underneath, right below the bias tape, where the opening is, right at the bottom edge of your bias tape. Again, using a 4mm stitch length. So it's about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the edge. Now that we have our binding attached to the top here, this is how it looks. It's going to be open, okay? We're not stitching the sides and the bottom just yet. Now take the other zipper. You're gonna get the 2 zipper tabs and you're going to stitch it at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on each side. And after you do that, you're gonna flip it over like this and you're going to top stitch it, okay, for both sides. Go ahead and do that now. For this next step, you're going to need again your double-sided tape and the finished zipper that you just did with the zipper tabs and your pouch. So far what you have done with your front zipper pocket, and you're gonna flip it with the kind of like the inside of it facing you, and put some double-sided tape along that bias tape binding that you created a minute ago, that you added, sorry, a minute ago. It's not sticking. It is. Okay. And you're going to make sure you're going to add your zipper with the right side facing down, the wrong side's facing you, and you want to make sure the direction of your zipper pull is correct. So in this case it's looking towards the right, okay? And the way you're going to know that it's placed correctly is by placing the bottom edge here of your zipper tape along the bottom edge of your binding. And of course you're going to center it as much as you can. If you want it to be perfect, you can always mark the center on your zipper and then mark the center here on the main panel, and that way you'll know that it is centered. I am going to eyeball it because it looks okay to me like this. It's not a big difference. So it's placed in there, and this is how it looks in the front, and it looks pretty even to me. I don't see a big difference. If you notice that it's kind of crooked, adjust it as necessary. And now you're going to stitch this right over here on the top of your binding. You may need the zipper foot for this step, so go ahead and change it to a zipper foot if you feel like you're going to need that. But just stitch it right over on the top part of your binding, catching your zipper, and make sure you don't go over the zipper teeth. So take your scissors and cut off any of the excess fabric that you see. Be careful not to cut the webbing. So you can just trim off any of the excess zipper tab and bias tape here on the side. You can use your rotary cutter and mat for this if you want, but for the curves you definitely are going to need to use your scissors, or I mean, if you're good with a rotary cutter, then use that. Perfect. Now bring your back slip pocket that you made, trim off the binding, excess binding here on the sides, as well as any excess material around the curves or around the sides. Now you're going to use your double-sided tape to join the back with the slip pocket and your front zipper pocket. And as you can see, this is the front zipper pocket, still not stitched around the sides or at the bottom, because we're going to do it all at once. You want to curve your zipper tabs using the back of the back panel as a guide. So this is the part where you're going to measure everything, make sure everything looks good, is fine, before you join it using the binding. I aligned it at the top first with the zipper, and then when I place it here at the bottom, everything looks even. Everything looks like it's together. So just make sure that you align it along the top first, and whatever is extra, then you just trim off like the sides and the bottom. But in this case, I don't have a lot of extra. I think I have just a little bit here. And what I'm going to do to make it perfect is I'm just gonna draw a line on my vinyl as of where I have to cut. Okay, because even with a rotary cutter could be a little bit tricky. So just go ahead and make it flat against the table, and wherever you see that there is extra fabric, go ahead and take your erasable pen and just draw it. And when you lift it up, that is your extra that you just have to trim off. So here's the final step. We're almost done, and we're getting ready to finish the pouch or the travel belt. So I'm gonna leave the clips, the Wonder clips, up here for now, because you're going to get your double-sided tape, and we're going to tape both exteriors together, so the back and the front. So open up your travel belt here, and you're going to have your exterior lining and the slip pocket, and you're going to place double-sided tape along the bottom edge, okay, and along both sides. And this step is important because even if you're an expert at adding binding, you want to make sure all your pieces kind of stay in place and they don't slide around when you're adding your binding. I find this step really, really helpful. So especially because we can only stitch this once. So we're gonna stitch it all together with the binding. That's why it's this step, this extra step. So now let it fall into place. Now we're going to take the Wonder clips out for now. Take them off, sorry. And we're going to add double-sided tape here on the top, so that we can join the zipper tape to our back panel. Okay, it looks good. Now let's add the binding. For the binding, you are going to get your piece of bias tape, and I usually start on one of the sides, and the reason for that is because I want to hide my binding seam with the webbing here, like that, and I leave enough of a tail out, this is about, I don't know, 3 inches, that I don't stitch, because I'm going to use that to join them at the end. And I start as you know, not too close to the curve, but not all the way up here. Kind of like measure where your webbing is, and kind of like right below the webbing. That's where you're going to start. At first, I add the binding just with my fingers and wonder clips. Okay, just to make sure that everything is inside the binding. All my layers are inside the binding. As I'm stitching this, I'm gonna be pulling the binding, the bias binding, you know, and because it's bias, it stretches. And you want it to stretch, you want to pull it a little bit. But for right now, we just want to make sure everything is inside the bias tape, all the layers. And I have a little bit of bias tape here left over, so I'm gonna stop stitching around this area so that I can like join them together and then finish it up. So now that we have kind of placed the binding, it's not perfect, but I have an idea of how it's going to go. I take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to use my special foot, and I have the video here that you see my experience using this special foot to add binding. It really worked really well, so let's go ahead and do that now. Let me share a couple of tips with you before we get started with adding the binding. First thing is you want to take your time. This is a long process. Take your time, don't rush it. Second, if you have some sort of owl or stiletto, this is the time to use it. Third, you want to start stitching on the area on the side that your binding is open. So before you add the binding, like with the wonder clips, find out which way is easier for you to sew. If you want to start, you know, so I started on the right hand side and go around the bottom and then the top. And just make sure that everything at the bottom of the binding looks good as well before you run it through the needle. Okay, also you see all this webbing, it's a lot of webbing. You can, at this point, you can like close it up and actually tuck it into here, into the zipper pocket. That way it's out of the way, but it's not affecting anything because the flat side is going to be against your sewing machine, so you'll be fine. Another thing is, as you can see, I have a little piece of freezer paper against my needle plate, and that's because this vinyl will get stuck on the needle plate. It will not go, and so having that little piece of paper here, tissue paper, freezer paper, whatever, really helps slide, and it will prevent the vinyl from getting stuck and messing up your tension, your stitching. So those are the tips to get started with adding the binding. You see how easy it was to make? I really hope you enjoy making this travel belt as much as I did. And if you need help with how to make the straps adjustable or any other tips on how to work with vinyl, check out my next videos here. Ciao!